What is going on, everybody? Jo here, and I'm bringing you guys Madden 17, Madden actually Ultimate Team 17 ratings. Like, I'm going to be doing my elite base elite predictions for this video. I'm going to go through the offense first, running back, quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end. No offensive line because I find that too difficult, and I don't know enough about the offensive line to make predictions on that. With the next video, I'll do defense. I'll try to hit like the main positions on it. It's going to be tough because defense has so many more positions than offense for ratings because we're taking away the offensive line. But I'll do it. I got the ratings here. I got predictions here. I have MUT 16's base elites in front of me, and I'll explain it. So let's get on into it. Let's start off with quarterback as we rip some packs for some ULs. Quarterbacks in MUT 16, the quarterbacks that were elite were Aaron Rodgers. We saw Brady. We saw Breeze. We saw Andrew Luck. We saw Peyton Manning, Big Ben, Russell Wilson, and Tony Romo. You guys know we lost Peyton Manning this upcoming season because he retired, so it stinks. But a lot of those guys are still here and they're still playing very good. One in particular, we saw Russell Wilson have a breakout year. And we saw a lot of guys last year who had like honorable mentions that were close, like an 84 overall on the cusp of it, who didn't make it. And we saw Romo, who kind of tailed off last year with injuries. Injuries play a big factor in that. Also Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck was an 87 as Romo was like an 86. And there's really no 85 overall when it comes to a quarterback for rating. So here are my predictions. Obviously, they released the ratings for the quarterbacks, the top 5 quarterbacks in the game. So those guys are most likely going to be elites. We got Rodgers, Cam Newton, Brady, Big Ben, and Russell Wilson. So then after that, you kind of have to do some predicting. You kind of have to go around and you kind of have to start saying to yourself, who could make it in your list? Who can make it in your top whatever? So I think Russell Wilson, who had a fantastic end of the year last year, could make it once again. I think he'll be an 80. Oh, he was actually one of them, my bad. I think we're going to see Carson Palmer be an elite this year. I don't think he's going to be like an 87. I think he'll be a very, like probably the lowest elite or one of the lowest elites because he kind of really only sprung to this greatness and like stats and everything he did last season. I know he had a good season prior to that, but last season he really blossomed. He really flourished in that offense. So that's my thinking when it comes to that. Andrew Luck will stay an elite is my guess. But I don't really think he's gonna like. If it was like a dynamic rating, he's like on the cusp. He's similar to a Carson Palmer, where like they really have to earn it this year. And if like looking forward to next year in the future, if they're gonna get upgrades, they really have to play well because these 85s that I'm guessing are an 86 overall that I'm gonna guess for them, they're on the cusp of it. And then my one person who I think is gonna replace Romo in this is gonna be Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers has been honestly very consistent the past few seasons. He's had a terrible offensive line, not a whole lot of a running game, and outside of like Keenan Allen and Antonio Gates, his receivers haven't been great. He's been under like a lot of pressure, like it just has like for his career. He gets a lot of the blame out there in San Diego, but I think he's put together some great seasons in the past, and I think that he deserves an elite this year. I think him, Palmer, and Luck are all in the same category. I think like in order to keep yourself an elite, like an elite company, you have to like have like a good history. Like you see Big Ben didn't have a great year last year. I know he was injured for some of it, but he still didn't have a great year, and he threw a lot of interceptions. But he's still one of the highest rating quarterbacks in the game because of his career. I think it's the same with MUT. It's hard for a guy just to make a quick leap. I think guys that are very close to it who will be left out will be Tony Romo because you saw he was an elite, and I think he's going to drop out of it. Andy Dalton, who had a fantastic season. I think he'll be an 84. Again, like I think when it comes to like career-wise, he hasn't shown enough in his career to be that elite yet. Maybe one more great season like he had last year, and he can do it. And Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan had a solid year. He's been on like the cusp, like probably like his whole career. He just hasn't made that leap into the elite company for MUT. And there's that. So again, I'll run through it again. We got Rodgers, Newton, Brady, Big Ben, Russell Wilson, Carson Palmer, Andrew Luck, and Phillip Rivers. Now in running back, in MUT 16, we lost a lot going into MUT 17. Let me tell you, like some of these guys you will not see anywhere near the top. We had Marshawn Lynch, obviously gone, Le'Veon Bell. We have DeMarco Murray, Adrian Peterson, Arian Foster, Eddie Lacy, Matt Forte, and Jamal Charles. We had a studded list in 16. If you look at some of those guys, you guys know Eddie Lacy had a horrendous season, plagued with him being overweight and whatnot. Marshawn Lynch retired. He was also injury plagued. DeMarco Murray had a god-awful season. His stint in Philadelphia didn't last long whatsoever. Arian Foster was hurt. Jamal Charles was hurt. Matt Forte's starting to show age, and he left the Bears. All signs. And This year, our top 5 running backs, according to EA Sports, are Le'Veon Bell, Adrian Peterson, Doug Martin, Jamal Charles, and Lamar Miller. So those are, I think, the elites that we're going to get. I actually don't think we're going to get any more elites. If you really think about it, you look at like stats and stuff, who do you guys really think is going to be an elite? Who do you guys really think is going to join that top 5? Because my honorable mentions are David Johnson, but he had a small sample size. I think he's going to be close. I think he showed a lot of good promise, but I don't think he's ready to be an elite. Chris Ivory, who's been probably one of the more consistent backs for the Jets and over football, just a hard-nosed runner. Not many of those guys anymore, similar to like a Marshawn Lynch. Gets a lot of touchdowns of that. Devonta Freeman only had one breakout year last year, kind of tailed off towards the end. Mark Ingram, who's been really solid for the Saints, just getting plagued by injuries, so I think that's why he's not making that jump. He hasn't really played like a full season where he's getting full RB1 work. And then Jonathan Stewart. Looking at that list, like you had LaShawn McCoy, who was like really close last year. You had Jeremy Hill. Jeremy Hill really regressed this year. He started a split time with Giovanni Bernard. He just wasn't getting off. Even though he had a lot of touchdowns, he wasn't getting the main work everyone expected him to. I think Eddie Lacy would be like an honorable mention. But looking at that list, I really don't think Eddie Lacy is going to get anything close to an elite this year. Not maybe like an 83, but he really trailed off, in my opinion. Arian Foster, he's getting older. He just signed a contract this week. It's going to be tough for him to be. I don't think he's going to be elite. I think he'll be like an 81 or an 82. Just my guesses on that. And then DeMarco Murray. I don't think DeMarco Murray is going to be near an 84. You guys saw the season he had last year. I know it's not his style of running, but he just didn't flow with that team at all. That was not him. That's not the DeMarco Murray we're used to seeing. So I think he drops off. I don't think he's an elite. And yeah, you got Jamal Charles. Lamar Miller made a tremendous leap. I think he started off at like an 81. So you guys know how big of a leap that is. But he's been one of the more consistent backs, and he got very limited work in Miami, which gives him a great chance to flourish in a offense like in Houston, where they love to just feed the running back. So yeah, we'll go through it again. Le'Veon, AP, Doug Martin, Jamal Charles, and Lamar Miller. Actually, guys, 2 of those 5 were golds last season. Then we got David Johnson, Chris Ivory, Freeman, Ingram, and J. Stu as like honorable mentions who are close and we should keep an eye on because they could definitely be elites in the upcoming years. One of the smaller groups, last year there were 8, now there's only 5 in my prediction. If we go to wide receiver is one of the more studded groups when it comes to the amount of elites they have. From last year, we had Antonio Brown, Dez Bryant, Calvin Johnson, Odell Beckham Jr., Julio Jones, Brandon Marshall, Demaryius Thomas, A.J. Green, Jordy Nelson, and T.Y. Hilton. So, looking at that, that is a ton of people. I think that's 10. That's 9 or 10 wide receivers that were elites. And they released the top 5. Top 5 goes as so. Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, A.J. Green, Odell, and DeAndre Hopkins. So there's our top 5. And adding on to it, I think you guys saw how good of a season Brandon Marshall had. He's maybe the number 6 wide receiver going to be in Madden, in my opinion. Demaryius Thomas, again, I think he gets another elite. You guys say, oh, he didn't have a great year last year. His touchdowns were kind of limited in that offense. I know he had some drops, but as for yards and receptions, he did very good. He was in like top 10 for yards. I know he didn't get a lot of upgrades, but he still had a good season, just more drops and less touchdowns than we're used to. And you guys did see how much less the offense in Denver was this year, with Peyton Manning kind of regressing this year and Brock Osweiler getting used to it. Mike Evans, I think, makes a jump from a gold to an elite. He started off at an 83, and I think he was on the cusp last year. I know he had a lot of drops. He was low on touchdowns, but with Jameis Winston in that offense, kind of a new quarterback to the scene, I think he's going to get that bump. He had a great year. He thrived even when there was no Vincent Jackson. He actually played his best football without Vincent Jackson than with him. He was like a one-man show at times. I know he had a lot of drops, which is tough, and low touchdowns, but I think he's showing a lot of promise, and he just continues to progress. And looking forward, I think he's going to be an elite for the future. Allen Robinson, I think, gets an elite. When it comes to guys, like Allen Robinson, as we just pull a card, that actually goes for a ton. That's awesome. Allen Robinson had a great year, tons and tons of touchdowns in that high-powered passing game in Jacksonville. I think he also didn't have a ton of receptions, but what makes Allen Robinson so good is that he racked up so many yards for his fewer amount of receptions, and he had a ton of touchdowns, which helps him out. And I think he's due to get some respect as one of the top, again, 9 or 10 receivers in the league. And then I think Larry Fitz. Larry Fitz had a good bounce-back year. In prior years, he wasn't really getting the amount of workload and the amount of targets, receptions, and touchdowns we used to see for Larry Fitz. Finished in the top 10. Larry Fitz had a great year. That's what we're happy to see. We're used to see from him. And I think the wide receivers that miss out, obviously Calvin Johnson with his retirement. I think Jordy Nelson with his injury. He was already in 86. He was actually one of the lower wide receivers to begin with, even though he's so good. I think he just drops out this year. He'll be close and definitely worth an upgrade the second he explodes. And T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton didn't have a great year last year. I know the offense wasn't great over there in Indianapolis. He still put together some good numbers, but I think he drops out and makes room for guys like Evans, Allen Robinson, and Larry Fitz again to shake things up. Honorable mentions, Emmanuel Sanders has been pretty consistent over the past few years. I think he just misses out. I don't think he's a top 10 receiver like some of these guys are, so I think he misses out on that. T.Y. Hilton, again, close. No cigar there. Really, really close. Maybe one of the next guys in, or guys on the bubble. And then Jarvis Landry, guy who continues to kill it with the amount of receptions, the amount of work he does. Very underappreciated in Miami. It seems to be a lot of their players, a lot of their playmakers get underappreciated out there, even like a Rashad Jones. And I think Jordy Nelson's another guy. Alshon Jeffrey could be really close. Again, an injury-plagued season in the beginning, but when he came out, he was on fire, let me tell you. He was great for them. Finished still in like the top 45 for yards. Still had a great year. And yeah, so that's that. Again, I'll read them over who I think is going to be it. Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, A.J. Green, Odell Beckham Jr., DeAndre Hopkins, Brandon Marshall, Demaryius Thomas, Mike Evans, Allen Robinson, and Larry Fitz. It's about 4 or 5 players that are going to make a jump from a gold to an elite, which is good. It's good to see some change, some newer guys out there. It's going to be good to see Julio Jones have one of the top elite cards in the beginning. He's had like an 86 and an 87 the past few years, but now getting respect as like a top 2 wide receiver in the league with Calvin gone. I think so. I'm actually leaving Dez off that list. No, Dez is on that list. What the heck? No, before in the comment section, you guys were like, what the hell, where's Dez? I actually forgot about him because he was injured. I completely forgot about him. Dez makes that list. I think we have 10 then. That makes sense. Yes, we have 10. None of those guys miss out. We just put Dez in on there. I can't believe I just messed that up. All right, well, whatever. I don't even know how I mean, as a Giants fan, you do forget about Dez. I mean, he dropped the ball. That's the only thing that's been relevant about him since. But yeah, so yeah, with the list, that list I just announced, put Dez in there, and boom, you got yourself your top 10. I think we get 10 elites, which is pretty good. Top 10 wide receivers right there. And we go to tight ends now. This list I will not mess up. For Madden Ultimate Team 16 are 5 elites, 6 elites we had actually. Was Gronk, Jimmy Graham, Jason Witten, Olsen, Antonio Gates, and Julius Thomas. So you guys know Antonio Gates missed the beginning of the year. I think he had some PED issues. Julius Thomas just couldn't get it going in Jacksonville at all. Still having a hard time. Greg Olsen had a fire year. Gronkowski had a fire year. Jason Witten had a down year. Didn't really, I mean, with the quarterback situation, didn't really produce a whole lot. And Jimmy Graham was injured, but even when he wasn't injured, he was a non-factor, it seemed like, in Seattle. So this is who I think is going to be an elite company this year, and I'll explain some guys who I think are close. So Gronkowski, obviously. Greg Olsen, who's just been so clutch for Carolina. He's been like one of their cornerstones for a receiving option. He's been a huge asset to their team. Travis Kelce, I think, finally gets a bump. He was an 84 last year. Bounces back with another good year on a team that doesn't have a great passing offense. So for Kansas City, that's a great weapon. Delaney Walker had a phenomenal year and thrived under a quarterback that was pretty new to the team in Marcus Mariota. So he was a great option for him. Jordan Reed, I think, gets a bump to an elite. He had a fantastic year. Probably one of the better receiving tight ends in the game. You go Kelce and Walker and Barnage are great blocking ones. But he's one of the best pure receiving tight ends in the game. I think then Gary Barnage gets a jump to an elite. He had a great year for a team that wasn't great at all in Cleveland. Put together some great yards, one of the better red zone targets, and probably their only target. Think of him like Jordan Cameron, how Jordan Cameron just exploded into an elite out of nowhere when he was playing for the Browns. So that's Gary Barnage, in my opinion. And then Tyler Eifert, an insane amount of touchdowns for him. A little low in the yards, had a few drops, but I think Tyler Eifert makes a jump to elite company. And guys like Jimmy Graham and Antonio Gates miss out, and Julius Thomas. I think the next few in, obviously Jimmy Graham, Antonio Gates, and Julius Thomas. Antonio Gates still had a good year, don't get me wrong, but I think some guys had better years than him. Ertz and Benjamin Watson are the other 2 guys that are just on the cusp. Ertz had a great year. You can't overlook how good of a year he had, even though Philly's year was kind of a failure, even with all the additions they made. Benjamin Watson had a really good season in New Orleans, which is going to help him out. Going to Baltimore, I don't think he's going to have as great of a season. You guys know how Baltimore kind of just dies when it comes to players and their offense. And then Again, Gates, Jimmy Graham with his injury. I think Jimmy Graham just drops out of it. I don't think he's an elite this year. I think he's going to have to prove it now, being in the Seattle offense. A big change to how he's going to have to play football. And then, yeah, Antonio Gates. So there's my offensive elite predictions for Madden Ultimate Team 17. Let me know if you guys think you disagree with. Again, I apologize for Des Bryant. You guys probably already flamed me before I caught it, but it is what it is. Let me know if you guys want to give your predictions for some defensive players. I'll definitely be looking at that, and I'll release a defensive video later. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.